Thank you for joining us today. Hello and welcome to From Lansing with Love. I'm your host, State Representative Leslie Love. Every month we discuss a different topic with interesting guests. I hope you will find this program both informative and insightful. Well, with fall fast approaching, we'll discuss how the new Detroit Public Schools Community District is getting ready for students. During the summer months, school districts take advantage of not having students in class for 3 months and use the time to improve their facilities, make renovations, and prepare for the opening of schools. With that leisure time for students, however, many kids get out of the routine of getting up early and being ready to absorb the knowledge that will help them be successful later in life. We will talk about some of the things parents can do to help their child get back in the routine, ready to learn as quickly as possible. So today we are thrilled to have as our guest the new Superintendent of Detroit Public Schools Community District, Dr. Nikolai Vitti. Dr. Vitti took the helm of Michigan's largest school district just this past May, assuming responsibility for more than 6,000 employees, 48,000 students, and an annual budget of $660 million. He comes from the Duval County Public Schools in Jacksonville, Florida, the 20th largest school district in the nation with approximately 130,000 students in 200 schools and an annual budget of $1.7 billion budget. For the past 4.5 years, Dr. Vitti helped the district's graduation rates increase from 67% in 2012 to 7.8% in 2016, surpassing all Florida urban districts in African American graduation rates. Dr. Vitti was previously Chief Academic Officer of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, Assistant Superintendent for the Miami-Dade District, and Deputy Chancellor at the Florida Department of Education. He also served children as a principal, Dean of Students, and a teacher. He received a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in education from Wake Forest University. He also holds a master's degree and a doctorate in education from Harvard University, Graduate School of Education. So thank you for being here, Dr. Vitti, and welcome to From Lansing with Love. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so it's exciting time now.
It is.
School, things are percolating. I was just in my district visiting Henry Ford High School, met the new principal there.
Yeah.
Very exciting, and I noticed that they had a summer program going on in the school. So what has been happening over the summertime before we get into what's happening in the fall, because you just haven't been sitting dormant? So
No, we've been working hard over the summer. All of the preparation to have a smooth opening of schools happens in the summer. We're using our schools for the first time in years as rec centers in partnership with the city so that we can have our students be exposed to caring, loving adults during the summertime. They can be attached to meaningful activities to stay out of trouble. And I think that's a long time coming in the city of Detroit, where for years the rec centers were not available. And the buildings that the city once used were no longer available, so we made ours available. In addition to that, we're recruiting teachers. We're fully staffed now with our principals. You mentioned the Henry Ford principal, someone who's a native Detroiter left to go to River Rouge, and we recruited him back. Fully staffed at the principal level, working with teacher vacancies, making sure that we have materials in schools, and most importantly, that we're recruiting students for the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, well, we're going to cover a lot of that today, and you touched on it. So let's begin. How can parents prepare their students for the academic year? What should they be doing over the summer recess?
I answer your question as obviously superintendent, the educational leader of the district, but I also answer it as a parent. I have 4 children myself, the oldest being 14, the youngest 8. All of them will be a part of Detroit Public School Community District come the fall. But in order to have our students be ready for the school year, I think it's important for parents to ensure students are reading throughout the summer. Find books that are interesting to them on topics that are interesting. You can get them at the local library, but reading is essential, and also writing. Have students write in a journal and just talk about what they read, not just read. As we move closer to the beginning of the school year, it's important to start a routine as far as when children go to bed. Even my children are staying up later than normal, obviously, right now during the summer. But about 2 weeks before school starts, they have to start going to bed at a time that is consistent with the time they should go to bed.
So what's a good time to go to bed? Because
Well,
I know it's different for every parent, but I'm like, be in bed at 8 o'clock. That'd be great.
I think that's hard. I would say 9 o'clock is a fair time, and you can get away with maybe a later bedtime depending on the age of the student. But I would say definitely no later than 10:30 because a lot of our students are waking up very early to make that first bus on the way to school. And the last thing that we want are children that are lethargic as they go to school, because that cuts down on learning.
Right. So speaking of catching a bus, summer recreation programs in the school, you coming into the district, have you had a chance to build a relationship with the mayor? How are you working with the mayor, the city services like bus and transportation on school routes? What work have you done behind that?
Well, the mayor and I are starting to forge a strong relationship. We want the same thing. We want the city to regain the prominence it once had. And we know, and on the mayor's side, that's through economic development, investing more in neighborhoods, and on my end, it's improving the educational system. And I think all of our work is certainly aligned, and we have to share resources and communicate in order to better align the few resources that we have. We have 2 initiatives already. I've been on the job for a month, and I think we have 2 signature initiatives that speak to that partnership. One has been the use of the rec centers. So the city funded summer programming for students, and then we used our rec centers, our schools, as the locations for those rec centers. That's one major initiative, and the other one that was just announced last week was the partnership with the Land Bank Authority, which would allow our district employees, including principals and teachers, a 50% discount on auctioned houses, so that we can have more of our employees, especially our teachers, live in the city, which means that they create better relationships with our students and our parents, which creates greater trust. We're also working on enhancing Randolph's career technical education program and some other career technical education programs, because we need to create a better pipeline from our schools to our businesses in Detroit. And we know that too many of our students find the high school curriculum as irrelevant. The more we can connect what they're learning to real work experiences, it means that that they find school more engaging, interesting, and more importantly, a launch pad into employment opportunities in the city, and we need to hire our own in our city.
That career tech education piece is huge, and in my second term as the Democratic Vice Chair of Workforce and Talent, we have looked at legislation to definitely encourage and improve opportunity and access to the career tech choice, particularly with the thousands of jobs that are coming online.
That's right.
For that. But we also hear that a lot of the barriers for whether you're an employee or apprentice or you're in school just trying to get an understanding of the field is transportation. And so are there any coordinated efforts to make sure our bus systems with Detroit Public Schools run on time? Will the new school district offer transportation on its own? So what are you doing in the realm of transportation for our students?
Yeah, I was aware of your work and your role on certain committees for workforce development. Look forward to working with you on that. But what we're trying to do is move back to the model where certain schools are just CTE hubs, rather than trying to do the high school experience and the CTE hubs. Just do the CTE hub. We're actually working on that at Randolph right now. It's hard to sell a high school program to students when they don't have the traditional electives, they don't have the athletics, and I think we can make a pure implementation of the CT program at Randolph and some of the other CT programs that are doing that. But to answer your question on transportation, we are looking to expand transportation through the district in order to try to hit every neighborhood so that transportation isn't an obstacle. We're also starting to reevaluate the fact that FTE is shared between the homeschool and the CTE program. That creates a disincentive for the traditional high school to send students to the CTE school. So we're working on doing that differently to limit that obstacle.
It's really funny because it seems like everything that's old is new again.
You're right.
When I was in high school, there was always, at some point period of the day, there were a group of students who caught a bus and went to Randolph. Right. I graduated from Cooley High School, so it was great. But let me ask, so you mentioned this new program, incentive that's being offered for teachers in the new Detroit Public School District to buy a house 50% off, and 50% off, like this is a sale, land bank. So the land bank houses, you never know what you get in the land
That's
bank.
right.
Some are really quality, and
Yeah.
some you definitely have to put an investment. But there's also commentary that people out there who would say, there are people who've lived in the city all their life. They don't get any discount on a house. Why should we offer this incentive for people to come from another community and move into Detroit? What do you say to that?
It's a fair criticism. I think that should be obviously the individuals that are more relevant to that answer would be the mayor, real estate developers, bank institutions that offer loans. But for myself as a superintendent, I was trying to find out of the box solutions to incentivizing teachers to come to work in our school district, and those that are in the school district to work or to live in Detroit. Only about 50% of our teachers actually live in the city. And to go back to what was old is new, is when you look back at public education in Detroit, a lot of the teachers once lived in the community. That creates stronger relationships, more credibility, more confidence, and just more trust between students and teachers. Too many of our students are just seeing unpredictability and a lack of consistency with relationships with adults. That happens in the home, but especially with their teachers, with their principals. And so if we can get teachers to live back in the city, I think it's a win-win. Economically, it's a win. It's a win for the community, but most importantly, and that should be the focus, is it's a win for children. So I can only speak to what I'm trying to do as superintendent, and this was one of those out-of-the-box solutions that I offered to the school board when they went through the vetting process to pick a new superintendent.
Do you know if that opportunity is available for current Detroit public school teachers? I may live in a house, but I go, hey, I'm kind of upside down. If I can get one of those,
yes.
That's great.
Current and future. It also applies to city employees as well, so not just district employees.
Before coming to the legislature, I was a professor at Mary Grove College, and every now and then I would invite students over in the summertime, and I would have on the patio, just cook a little something and talk. And just this past weekend, I got a text message from a former student, and she says she's giving me an update. She's going to head to graduate school at CMU, and just was talking about, just being an inspiration. So I think it is very good to have not only teachers, but even our police officers live in the community that they represent. It's just some grounding and kind of like pillars in that community that they offer. But I also know that you had a job fair as well.
That's right.
To attract teachers, good quality teachers. Tell us about that.
So we've had 2 so far, and then we also had one to recruit teachers and students, parents from charter schools that recently closed in Detroit. So we've recruited about 100 teachers from 2 job fairs so far. Right now we're looking at over 300 vacancies. That's a combination of special education and general ed classrooms with a month ago. I think that will be cut. We're working hard. I made leadership changes in human resources to try to create a greater sense of urgency with the recruitment of teachers. We're also in the final stages of completing the collective bargaining agreement with our teachers to try to increase salaries. So we have to get to a point where we're fully staffed at the beginning of the year, and throughout the year, it's just frankly an injustice for our students not to have a full-time certified teacher in all of our classrooms. We're going to get there. I think we're going to be closer than we were last year at the beginning of the year, and I do believe by 18-19, which is the following year, we'll be fully staffed because it's just about systems and it's about creating the right incentive package. I think the land bank opportunity, but more importantly, the opportunity to increase salaries and create better working conditions for teachers has to be a priority, and I'm going to make that a priority as superintendent.
Good to hear that.
Yeah.
We'll be watching
Yeah.
because even this past legislative session earlier in the year, we passed some legislation about MISPers out of the House and changing from the hybrid program to this 401. And the arguments that was given by people on the other side of the aisle was that teachers, they they move about. Some people are very short term in the profession and they want to take their retirement. So coming out of undergrad, I was an education major, and I did not, Sister Dr. Eileen Rice did not teach us that this was a fly-by-night career. In fact, the first semester of first term, she really piled it on. She said, if this is not something that you love, that you are you feel you're designed for, don't do it. And so I don't look at it at all as this, I'm going to try it out for 5 years kind of thing. Has this changed? Has there been a change in teacher perspective of how they approach education that
I
I'm just not aware of?
think for some it has. I wouldn't say for all. I still think that people are going through undergraduate studies knowing they want to be a teacher and they're committed long term to be a teacher. But I think that there is a reality that millennials and younger generations are looking at not looking at one career for their entire life, and so that is obviously impacting all industries, but even the teaching profession. What we have to do a better job of is creating the right financial package, salary, to attract our strongest undergraduate students to go into teaching, but more importantly, to keep them there. That's salary, but I think that's also work conditions, and we have to create better opportunities for teachers to stay connected to the classroom, but still grow professionally. A lot of our strongest teachers, after about 5 to 7 years of teaching, feel like they hit a professional ceiling, and we don't really offer new and different opportunities beyond being an administrator, and that's just not interesting for a lot of teachers. They want to stay connected to children and not be administrators. We have to do a better job of creating different pathways.
Okay, so if someone is interested in applying for a job, whether it's to be a teacher or an administrative office or support, for Detroit Public School Community District, where would they go to find that information?
Right to our website, and we're trying to enhance that to make that easier. We're also trying to expedite the hiring process, so we limit the red tape and bureaucracy that's gotten in the way of teachers signaling that they're interested and then actually being connected to a principal and then therefore a placement. But I would recommend them to go directly to our website to find information.
Okay, and we'll make sure to put that website information on the screen below. I want to talk very briefly before we go to break about parents. So I think one of the crucial elements in this whole equation are the parents. We've talked about the teachers, getting children ready for school, but what can parents do to be more involved, and what opportunities will be available for parents to be more engaged with their schools?
Right. Well, I always say, as a former teacher, and I've always worked in some of our toughest cities throughout the country, is I've never met a parent that doesn't care about their child's education. The only parents that I've ever come across that don't have a day-to-day focus on their children are those that are dealing with substance dependency. Outside of that, the parents that aren't actively involved in their child's education just often don't have the confidence, skill, or positive experiences when they were students to advocate for their child's education. So one thing that we're doing that we're going to start to build in our district is a parent academy. And the parent academy is something that I actually wrote my dissertation on in my work in Miami, and we built a parent academy in Jacksonville. And the Parent Academy will focus on 3 major areas. 1, how to help a parent advocate more and better for their child's education. How to help a parent just deal with developing skills to be a better parent. And also helping the parent, what I also call the whole parent. It's real hard to focus on your child's education when you're trying to pay the light bill, when you're trying to keep a job, or you're trying to get a job. So the Parent Academy is going to be out in the community. We'll initially fund it through private dollars and then shift to our own dollars. But the classes that will be offered will focus on what questions to ask during a parent-teacher conference, how to promote literacy at a young age, how to build critical thinking skills with students in the home, how to fill out a FAFSA form to get college aid for college.
Absolutely.
And then other classes will focus on how to help your child pick friends, how to monitor their activity on social media, and then how to deal with discipline issues and conflict resolution when there's conflict in the home, because there's always going to be conflict. And then lastly, offer parents classes on resume building, job interview skills, how to build financial literacy. So in my previous work in Jacksonville, we engage over 8,000 parents, and I think that there's a huge demand for this in Detroit, and something that I look forward to building in the future years.
That is exciting to hear, and I'm looking forward to that. But I do hear parents a lot say, what is this new math that's coming online?
Well,
So is
that's
there
right.
any
Yes.
is there any help for how do you help them with their homework because you
Yeah.
can't you
Well,
know.
I could speak to that, and so can my wife, who's also a former teacher, which is, yeah, the new math was very difficult for parents because we learn math a certain way. But we will be offering web sessions on our website so that parents can access how to help do the homework at home. We'll also have a hotline that parents can call in order to get help from teachers after hours and in the afternoon, evening, retired teachers or current teachers that are willing to make some extra money in the evening. So those are ways that we're going to help parents, and through the Parent Academy, offering classes at schools to better understand how to teach the math.
Okay. I know a lot of parents come in through the fun stuff, sports and entertainment. So I know every time we had a talent show, the auditorium was packed with parents, or at a sporting event, they want to come and encourage their young people. Is there any thought or coordinated effort? Because that's usually the place where you'll get the most bang
That's
for your
right.
buck.
Right.
You bring them in that way, and then you keep, the academy is another form to do that. Anything around sports and arts and culture like that?
Well, I will say on the arts front, I think that there's a huge demand and opportunity to expand the arts in Detroit. I say this as a point of pride, but also to signal my commitment to the arts. When I was in Jacksonville, I was named Florida Superintendent of the Year for the arts separately and for music because I restored art and music in all schools throughout our district, and I plan to do that in Detroit as well.
This is exciting news. All the creative kids out there, you've got a superintendent that loves the arts.
And not only, and I would say not even the students that consider themselves creative, it's even, students that don't, because everyone benefits from art exposure.
Absolutely.
So, part of that process will be analyzing our budget this year, seeing where the gaps are, the opportunities, and then connecting that to a new strategic plan. But back to your question, we have to leverage the sporting events, the talent shows, to message the parents that there's opportunities to go to the Parent Academy, and also to try to message the parents to try to help enrollment and in recruitment. The best way to market schools is through word of mouth. And when parents have a good experience, then they'll tell another parent that had a good experience. So we also have to use those opportunities as a better way to market our schools.
Yes. To hear that you were honored in the arts in your former school district, and me being a creative, I taught in the arts for many years, and so much focus has been on STEM and not enough on arts, and I'm always saying STEAM, because it's the creative that makes it sexy and attractive. And I don't know that people think about when they design buildings or furniture or even clothing, there is the mechanics of building clothes, and then there's the creative of designing them. And so that the two can be and are related in many cases, and how you plan to bring arts back into every school in the district. So I'm excited to hear that. I think we bombard our kids with so much right now to be an adult now, to be prepared for, know what you want to be in middle school. And I didn't figure it out till I was probably 30. So it's good to hear that. And I see that there are new programs. Not only are you talking about integrating arts into schools, but I saw a sign at my Verner Elementary in my district that says they'll have a Montessori Academy there. What other new programs can we look forward to in the new school district?
So you mentioned Montessori, a lot of emphasis on STEM. So that's science, technology, engineering, and math type of programs. Beginning slowly to expand art and music programming is another focus. And then, something that we talked about earlier is at Randolph and other schools, career technical education type programming. I think it's important to talk about programming for a minute. We through the emergency management process and through financial emergencies, we have de-invested in programming. And we know that a core education linked to reading, math, science, and social studies is obviously essential. but so many of our students connect to the core curriculum because of the electives. And to build their confidence and just overall self-esteem through the electives, which then helps them in the core areas. And if we're going to bring students back to traditional public schools, we have to ramp up our programming. So Montessori, focus on STEM, art and music in general, and then our wraparound services. That's what's unique in traditional public schools, is trying to get to the whole child and the whole parent and actually the community, which I think is very different than what a lot of charter schools and even private schools offer.
What are some of those wraparound services?
So wraparound services would be linked to additional counseling for our students, access to mental health and just health care in general for our parents or guardians, caregivers, after school programming. Those are all examples of wraparound services that are unique in our schools as compared to other schools in the city.
I've had students from DPS come and advocate for the clinics in the schools.
Yes.
Will we still have the clinics in the schools?
We have some. Our vision is try to expand that district-wide, and I think we can do that through private-public partnerships and even with stronger partnerships with our hospitals. You know, one thing that I was able to do in my other roles in other cities is try to bring those services to the school. A lot of our parents don't have the time, energy, or know how to navigate the process in order to gain access to those resources.
Right.
We put them at the school, they're immediately there.
Okay, so there's a couple of more things before we run out of time today. You were in an interview, and when you first came on board, where you said you'd like to see DPS focus more on improving its traditional public schools rather than to continue to expand resources of authorizing charter schools. Can you talk about that, your relationship between charter schools and traditional schools?
Sure. So I've always been an advocate of choice. I think the problem in Michigan is it hasn't been controlled quality choice. I think we all want parents to have the option to pick the school that they think is best for their child. But at the same time, the charter movement in Michigan has not been regulated, and we can't experiment on our kids. We don't have the time. And we're wasting resources when we allow providers to open up schools that have no track record of success, especially in the urban core.
We've had quite a disaster in Michigan with the school, and we've been inundated with it's too much choice.
Correct.
And not regulated.
And then so for us, it's what do we own? We own traditional public schools, so let's focus on that, increase the quality there, and then let charters focus on their work, but our work as a district should be on traditional public schools.
Absolutely.
And so that's where that comment came from.
My last question for you, Dr. Vitti,
Sure.
and it's been wonderful talking to you, and it's, what surprised you the most when you came and explored Detroit Public Schools?
Yeah.
After almost 10 years of emergency management, what kind of blew your mind?
Well, on the positive is the deep commitment that employees, especially teachers, have to children. Despite all the chaos, despite all the, honestly, mismanagement, lack of leadership, changing governance structures, there were adults that came to work every day despite all the noise, all the nonsense, and focused on children that are still here. So that was, I knew that, but to actually talk to people and see that is encouraging just on a human level. But beyond that, and more on the negative or critical side, is just a complete lack of systems and processes from everything, to hiring people, to paying people, curriculum selection, program development. The district has been run as if it was in bankruptcy, releasing assets with no overall vision for what a district should look like. And it's not about any individual, but people that ran the district before Alicia Merriweather were not educators. They weren't educational leaders, so they didn't think about the classroom. They didn't think how to create a system that supported teachers and principals and students. They ran the district like a business. And you can see the decade length of a lack of vision for children. So, I say we are rebuilding a district brick by brick, but we're going to go fast. And we have a core group of employees that deeply care about kids that just need to be better supported. And we will make this district, it sounds cliche, but we're going to make it a great district again. I'm completely comfortable in saying that and confident. We just have to manage expectations knowing it's not going to happen overnight. But with the right focus, we'll get there. And I'm excited to work for a school board, which is very important, that's locally elected and dedicated to the school system. We're working working very well together, and our focus is on children, and I don't think we could say that over the last decade.
Okay. There's so much more to this interview that you all have to log into my website to see additional interview questions and answers, and also watch it on the YouTube as well. But Dr. Vitti, I have to ask you this one question. We've talked about preparing students, recruiting teachers, incentives for teachers, wraparound programs, public-private partnerships, what to look forward to in the district. If I'm going into 9th grade, I'm the student, and I've heard a lot about what's happened to Detroit Public Schools. I went through it. I saw that I didn't have the same teacher from month to month, regardless from year to year. Things were kind of haphazard, from academics to the social environment to my safety. And I don't know if I want to come back. What do you say to a student who, you know, they want to be proud DPS, maybe their parents were? How do you get that? What do you say to that student?
I say that when traditional public education gets it gets it right better than a charter private school, because it's tied to the community. It's tied to neighborhoods. And there's a legacy and a history connected to traditional public schools. I mean, you can sit here as a graduate of Cooley and talk about you not being here unless you had that education. And that's what's unique about our traditional public schools, is the history that's linked to that. Now, granted, history will only take you so far because of the challenges of running the system in individual schools. But I would encourage a student and a parent to look at an individual school. Don't look at the history of the district or all the politics that unfortunately have gotten in the way of what's happened for children, but look at the individual school. There are gems of schools individually within our district. Our work is to try to scale that so all schools are that way. And what I would tell a student is, I'm someone who has multiple degrees. My wife has multiple degrees. I'm also someone who has options. And although I'm the superintendent, I'm putting my 4 children in our school system. And so it's not just saying that because I'm superintendent. I'm saying that as a parent who has options. And so if I'm putting my own children in the school system, it's a testament of what I believe that our teachers and principals can do, not only, again, for my children, but all children.
So I'm a student again.
Yeah.
Tell me about the lunch. What can we expect in terms of this cafeteria program?
Well, I can tell you,
I am the Snicker bar line again.
This comes up all the time. It even comes up in my own home. So obviously my students weren't in the school system last year, but they were in the school system I ran as a superintendent in Jacksonville. And we'd have debates about the quality of cafeteria food at our kitchen table. My children were divided. Some loved the cafeteria food and some didn't. But I will say that I do believe that our cafeteria food here in Detroit is healthier than it was even 5-10 years ago. It's certainly a better health than when we went to school. Now that's the challenge, is that it's less salty, it's got less calories. That's the healthier component, but it's not as tasty. And that's what students are frustrated about. So we have to continue to build awareness about why wellness is important. We also can create more savory options that are also healthy, and I think we can work on that as well. But I think the issue more than anything else is wellness, and creating that. Our students, unfortunately, are used to eating less expensive food that's higher in sugar and more tasty. That's not necessarily the healthy choice. So it's creating a better blend, and I think doing a better job of educating students with what they eat and doing a better job of that. But we're going to do more taste testing with students, getting their feedback so that we can increase participation of breakfast and lunch. And it's free to our students across the district, no matter what school you're at, which I think is important from an equity perspective.
And it's free based on economics, or if you just want free lunch, you can
No,
have free
because
lunch?
we participate in what's called the CEP program. So because those schools all have a high percentage of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, even if you as an individual student do not, you can still access the free breakfast and lunch program.
Okay, great. I know it used to be back in the day they cooked on campus.
Yeah, that's right.
Now I think they bring in it's
Most of it.
catered. So is that still the combination here? Or?
Yeah, it's still the combination, mainly relying on contracted services. It is cooked, but lightly, not the way it used to be. One thing that we are looking at as a district is moving away from contracted services to more full-time employees. Now, that's a good example of I can't do that overnight, but I am committed to studying that and understanding that long term. I would like to go back to the days where our custodians were from the neighborhood and directly linked to the school, that our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, that has all been contracted out, and there's been a disconnect between the community and schools, and really a lack of ownership, because pay is lower, benefits are lower. There's a value on that economically because that means more dollars can go in the classroom, but there's also a downfall with that as well. So if we are going to move back to cooking in schools, we're going to have to probably move into more of a full-time employment model rather than contracted.
Well, on the spectrum of wellness, because in urban communities, hypertension, diabetes is very high. On every corner, there's a fried something you can get.
Yeah.
And in the era of video games, not a lot of people are active. And if you're not an athlete, there should also be options, other things. Some schools are taking up yoga and meditation, which is good mentally and physically for your health. But even having conversations about just different ways that you're approaching wellness, not only in the cafeteria food perhaps, but in some other alternative ways to be active and exercise to just keep your physical body in good condition.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we'll talk about more is the whole child. So a whole child is typically connected to arts and music, but that's also physical education, it's wellness in general. And so wellness is certainly connected to what you eat, but you already mentioned some programs that I'd like to scale district-wide is mindfulness, just so students can start to concentrate and centralize their feelings, their anger, because it's real, and how to internalize that and work through that in a positive way rather than a negative way.
Because this is going to be on the after show,
Right. Yeah,
because
yeah,
this interview is going on and on. So this is the part of the after show, and I'm really delving into myself as a student perspective here. And bullying is another big issue that's come up. Cell phone. I was in the high school in the district, and a young lady was in the office because her cell phone was taken away. And it was almost as if someone ripped her heart out of her chest. It's like, it's one class period. You can't live without your cell phone. I mean, we've created a generation of very addicted people to these electronic devices. And that mindfulness that you talked about, and how to deal with anger or yourself or your feelings or your broken heart because he or she didn't love you back. It's all a part of this culture of how do we serve young people and make sure. And I like to see people taking pride, again, in our Detroit public schools and feeling like I'm a proud DPS graduate. And I'm like, yeah, I went to DPS. Yeah. So,
well, I think that can be restored, and that's what makes our district different, is that there's a legacy, there's a history connected to that. There are hundreds of graduates, some that have become prominent, like yourself, and others that are just good people that are raising a family and staying in the community. That story needs to be told more, because that's who our young people can become. And we've lost sight of that because of years of mismanagement of different governance structures, individuals that weren't educational leaders, and frankly, individuals that weren't committed to the city, that, like I said, ran the district as a business, not with heart and soul. And that's different. You have 7 elected officials, and you have a superintendent and myself who's seasoned, experienced with a track record, and loves this city more than any other city in this country, having grown up in Metro Detroit. So, you know, we haven't talked a lot about it, but when I go in the classrooms, and I was able to do this at the end of the school year, I actually see myself. In our students. So you talk about talking to our students. We may look different based on skin color, ethnicity, different last names. But as a kid who grew up in a working class immigrant background who had dyslexia and struggled throughout school, no one that I went to school with would have thought I would be superintendent. You know, I was a good athlete, and that was my ticket to college.
What was your sport?
I played football, basketball, baseball, and track.
Oh, wow.
And played football in college. But that was my ticket to do something outside of what I traditionally saw and what I even thought I could become. And so the difference in my life eventually was realizing that education was the vehicle for my own transformation, but also the vehicle for general social change and social justice. And that's different in our school district. We haven't, I don't think we've had that kind of passion and commitment and track record, and that's what's going to lead our district to be the district it once was. And our students need to know that. We need to tell that story. Not only do I, but our board and all the alumni that are part of the school district. And so that's how we're going to restore the pride and confidence in our school district.
Yeah, we have come a long way. Detroit Public School District, Community District, has gone through it. And I'm glad to have a breath of fresh air in our newly elected school board members. How are you working with the school board now?
It's you know, I was very intentional. I was in Jacksonville. I had another 2 to 3 years on my contract. When the position became open, I started to get phone calls to say, we know you're from the area, would you come back? And I was skeptical, and the search firm said, this board is for real. They really want reform, and they realize there's a short window of opportunity to turn the district around. And I said, I'll apply, but it needs to be a match. I have to feel comfortable with them, and they have to feel comfortable with me. Because I didn't want to do this work with tension with the people that have to be working the most together to get it right. There's going to be times where we disagree. It's inevitable. The 7 among them will disagree, and I'll disagree. But how are we going to deal with that disagreement? Are we going to be respectful, professional, and see where there's commonality or where there's difference? And can we eventually agree to disagree and then move forward to the next issue? And I can tell you during the interview process and then over a month, I deeply believe that all 7 board members are there because they care about students and they care about the city. And all 7 understand governance. They know that their role is policy and not leading the day-to-day operations, and that's my role. And that they wanted a proven leader to transform the district. And their role is to support that and guide that, but not drive it. That's my job. And I like them personally, which I think is important. You have to like people who you work with. I respect them, and I think we respect each other. And I think it's a long time coming for the city to see public officials actually working together and not using the position for themselves or for gain long term.
Right.
And I'm committed to doing that, and I think this board is committed as well.
Well, they definitely seemed enthusiastic about you coming on board when we had the Detroit Caucus had its reception, welcoming you, and the board members appeared there. So recently, it was in the paper that you have announced kind of your leadership team, and it's a combination of folks from Florida and Detroiters. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think that I said in the interview process that the best leadership teams are diverse teams. And I mean diversity in a traditional sense of race, ethnicity, and gender, but I also mean that as far as experiences. So it's a dynamic team. I've never yet worked for a team as dynamic as this one. It's made up of people that have been in the school system for a while, people like Alicia Merriweather or Felicia Venable that's been there for a while. But it's also people that have grown up in Detroit and worked in K-12 outside of the school district, someone like Sherlonda Buckman. But then again, it's also made up of people that have worked with me directly in Florida, whether that be Jacksonville or Miami. And these are individuals that know my plays, if you will, the playbook. They know the blueprint. They know my sense of urgency. They know how to create systems. And I think that combination of that talent and perspectives will lead to great conversations, even some arguments about where to go. But I want to create a team that's not just a bunch of yes people, that they're going to push back on me, each other. But it's also a team of ready superintendents. I mean, of that team, I can say comfortably that there are 6 to 7, if not more, that will be superintendents in large urban school districts throughout this country. And so they were willing to come or stay because I think they believe in the vision of where we're headed, but they also want to be a part of something unique and different, so that they can grow personally, give back to the city and children, but also use that as the next opportunity for their own growth and development and opportunity. So, and people underestimate how important that cabinet is, because that cabinet reflects not only the city and the expectations of the city, but you have to have a cabinet that's going to drill down and create at-scale systematic change. And like I always say to the cabinet, if it doesn't happen in this room, it's not happening. So you have to build capacity, you have to build systems, you have to create systems of support and accountability that then penetrate the entire organization. And I will tell you, that group of people, they're hardworking, they're smart, and they're committed.
You're popping my socks here, because this is brilliant to hear, and I agree with you. I don't think people understand the importance of that leadership team,
Right.
because they set the agenda.
That's
It's
right.
the quarterbacks, and they're calling the plays, and they're moving it forward. And it's a great combination, not only in diversity of men and women and ethnicities, and locals who've been around
That's
for a
right.
long time,
Right.
and then the team that knows you.
Yeah.
And so I'm very hopeful for all of this. And in my district, I have at least 4 school districts, in-house District 10 alone. And so I've gotten to know all of those superintendents, and I look forward to working with you and
Me
getting
too.
to know you. And so before I close out for this interview, because we can continue to talk on and on and on and on and on, here's my last big question.
Okay.
I think to most people, to look at Detroit Public Schools, the largest school system in the state of Michigan, who's gone through this horrific emergency manager takeover situation, a school board that was disenfranchised, now working with a newly elected school board, schools in different degrees of chaos, EAA and
Right.
DPS and charter schools, and on and on and on and on. Most people would be scared crapless, and go, yeah, not for me. You ran into the fire.
I did.
Why you, and why at this time is this the right place for you?
My hesitation was only about match between me and the school board, meaning I know I can do this work. I know I can do this work because I've done it, but I know I can do it because it's where my heart and soul is. I believe my entire life, as far as my personal life and my professional life, has all been about this moment. And so the challenges that I had growing up, the challenges my family had growing up, but yet the opportunities that came to me because people loved and supported me in my family and outside, having a chance to go to Harvard, to be a presidential scholarship as a kid who struggled all throughout school, as someone who had a chance to work with 3 national superintendents of the year. All of that has been about this moment. And so I'm just proud to be here talking to you, but more importantly, I wake up every day and I have to pinch myself to realize that I am the superintendent of Detroit Public Schools Community District. To me, that's an honor and a privilege. I'm working nonstop, but it's not work, it's a passion. And so I could see myself nowhere else. And as I did work in New York, Miami, Jacksonville, I said to myself, I'm moving the needle in these areas, but why am I not doing it where it's needed the most and where it would mean the most? And that's Detroit. And so my fear is not staying here. My fear is after we turn this around, how long do I have the privilege of doing this? Because I can't think of any other job that would be more meaningful to me than this one.
Well, this is a legendary moment. This is an opportunity, just like when Mayor Coleman A. Young became the first African-American mayor of the city of Detroit, and his legacy lives on and on and on after him. A great superintendent who moves the needle significantly, like you've done in Florida, here in Detroit. Legendary. So this is a big moment for you, a very big opportunity, and the sky's the limit, and maybe you'll be the new DeVos after you turn this around.
Believe it
but
or not,
this is the moment.
I've had opportunities to work in D.C. under the Obama administration. And I didn't move forward on that because I love doing work in districts, and I was at a good place in Miami. Honestly, people have asked me, is this about the next step? And I honestly, I'm not even thinking about the next step. And it sounds almost political or cliche, but I can't see myself anywhere but here. Because I don't know what other job would be more meaningful than this one, only because it's connected to my home. It's hard, challenging work, which is that's been who I am. And I don't know what else could be more rewarding than this, professionally or personally. And that might be short-sighted, but I think it also speaks to how deeply committed I am to this and the need for longevity and sustainability with leadership. That's also what's crippled the school district for years, just this constant turnover of leadership. And so this isn't about the next step. This isn't about a launching pad or a springboard. In fact, if I wanted to do that, I would have gone to larger districts that are more nationally renowned and have better systems and infrastructure to leverage for that next job. To me, this is about the now, not about the future.
I wasn't trying to
No.
I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, but I just said that because
Right.
it's people have asked me that, but I think in this interview it's important that people hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't take it as an offense at all.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So where you said this is home? Where exactly was your home? What high school did you graduate from?
So I grew up in Dearborn Heights, and I went to Divine Child, a Catholic school. My mother, who raised me basically on her own, and my parents worked in factories and parked cars in Detroit at the Tiger games. Wanted me to go to Catholic school. They just felt, one, because of religion, but also because they wanted me to have the best opportunity that they thought I could have. And there were difficult moments, but looking back, I'm glad I went to the school I went to. But in thinking about my own life and my own experiences, I think the structure that I had in that school is the structure that all children need to have in all schools. That's part of what I wake up and do every day as a superintendent.
So are your children excited about going to their new
Yeah,
school?
well, I think for my children, since they've been young, they always hear about how great Detroit is and why it's the best city in the world. And so now that they're here, I can say, see, I told you. So they're starting to become believers now, but they're excited. I don't think they're excited for the winter yet, but we have to incorporate that in their culture and their lives.
When I lived in California and then moved back to Detroit, that first winter was very difficult.
But it's also the experience.
Yeah, and Detroit has changed a lot, and since you probably lived here, what has been your favorite thing to do in Detroit now? What's your fun thing?
Honestly, my favorite thing to do is just to walk around downtown and just absorb it. Obviously, it's always been going to the Lions game and the Tiger game, but even 2 nights ago, I was able to go to the premiere of Detroit with my wife. And I remember when I was young, my grandmother, who was a cashier that worked at a Ford car dealership, would take me to the Fox Theater. It was just her and I. And I was a young teenager then, just her and I remember going to the Fox. And it was emotional to go back to the Fox as now the superintendent with my wife and to be dressed up and, to be now superintendent. But it's moments like that that just put it all together.
All right. Wow. This has been probably my favorite show so far since we've been doing From Lansing with Love. And unfortunately, it has to come to an end. So that's about all the time we have for today. And I'd like to once again thank my guest, Dr. Nikolai Vitti, Superintendent of Detroit Public Schools Community District, for joining us today. And thank you to all of you for watching. If you have an idea for a show or you'd like to be a show guest, please contact my office. That contact information will be on the screen. So until next time, be good to yourself and each other. And with that, we're all clear and out of here.